Good morning and welcome to Coffee with Tom and Joanne. I'm Tom Matthews.
And I'm Joanne Taranto. And today we wanted to talk a little bit about processes and systems because they're so important in our business. And having everybody rowing in the same direction on a transaction is the ultimate goal so that everybody gets to the finish line with a great experience. So, one of the things that we wanted to talk about was there is a process for buying and selling real estate, a general framework that, people follow, and how you approach that can be a little bit different. So, Tom, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I would love to, Joanne. I'd love to also just share with people about systems as well, because we are very system oriented. So, what Joanne and I like to say is that people are different
Hmm.
and the properties are different,
Hmm.
but the general framework of the transaction is very similar every single time. So, we get the excitement of having new people and new properties, but people don't have to feel like it's our first transaction every time. So I think that's really like what it comes down to because I meet too many agents who I say to them, we're closing in 3 days. Do you have your smoke cert in place? And they're like, oh my God, I forgot about it. Like you can't sell a piece of real estate in the state of Massachusetts without having a smoke cert in hand. So, part of what Joanne and I have developed along with our company, because Gibson Sotheby's has done a great job of putting systems and processes in place
Hmm.
for the seller side. On the buyer side, that's been mostly things that we've generated on our own.
Hmm.
But giving people the experience, like this is not our first time selling real estate, even though it may be their first time, we will kind of walk them through kind of the process and so forth. I think one of the systems that Joanne and I have put in that I'm really proud of is the first time buyer guide that we created and the
Hmm.
video that we have on YouTube. So Joanne, tell people a little bit about that buyer guide and why we're so proud of it.
So, before the pandemic changed all of our lives, we used to take every single meeting face to face. And
Right.
it took a lot of time out of our day. It took a lot of time out of our clients' day. We would meet in a mutual meeting location and get a cup of coffee, which we're still happy to do. But for a
Right.
lot of people who have busy lifestyles, they've got children, pets, work, travel, long hours in the office, we give them the option to kind of do our buyer consultation on their own time. And what that has enabled us to do is to walk people through soup to nut of how to get ready to buy a piece of property, what you need in place before you go out and look at your first home, how home inspections work, when you need to come up with money. All of these things are important parts of the transaction that we like to lay out for people so that they can learn them at their own pace. Now, when we go out looking at properties, we're going to be reminding our clients of all
Yep.
these important steps, and we will remind you 10 times during the transaction of what you are supposed to be doing and what we are doing. Because we find that the experience is what people remember.
Right.
So we want people to have an amazing experience buying and selling real estate because it's an excellent way to build wealth. And if you have a bad experience, you may be less inclined to do it again,
Right.
even if it was the right thing for you to do at the time. So having this buyer consultation opens up a conversation that we can then have about what your needs and wants are, right?
Right.
So needs are things like, I need 4 bedrooms. I need to be within 30 minutes of my job. I need to be X, Y, and Z. And then things that you want are I want a finished basement. I want a fenced in backyard. I want a 3-car garage. Things that are not always around, but if we found it, it would be a great bonus, right?
Right.
So having these conversations up front is another one of our systems.
Right.
And that system helps us to get aligned with each other.
Right.
That when we go out and we're looking at houses, I remember that you have 3 dogs, and I remember that you have an elderly parent that comes to stay for months at a time. These things are really important lifestyle pieces that if we don't take the time to systematically go through these things when we're getting to know each other, it would be very hard to learn all of these details in over the course of months while we're working together to buy or sell a piece of real estate.
Yeah.
So, Tom, what's a process for a seller that we do that we really like?
Yeah, I love the MLS input forms. So just a funny side story. Since Joanne and I've been working together so long, we've like basically learned all our lessons by trial by fire. And so we would go out, and I would meet with a seller, I get the contract signed, and Joanne would say, "Hey Tom, how many fireplaces were there?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And she was like, what colors are the rooms?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And she's like, "Tom, come on. I'm thrilled that you got a signed listing contract, but now I got to go out and do this again."
Yeah.
So she took the MLS listing, basically put it into a check sheet and printed out this like 7-page form. So now when I go out to meet with the sellers, I bring my clipboard and I go in, I fill it out, and I fill out how many fireplaces there are, how many windows are in the room, what kind of windows, are they double hung, are they picture windows,
Mhm,
and we go through this really copious intake process.
mhm,
What's great about it is then we scan it, put it on our Dropbox file, and Joanne and I can then both collaborate when putting a listing together. But the other nice thing is we typically ask the seller to walk around with us at that time, asking them the age of the roof, age of the furnace, kind of figuring out the nuances. And what that does is that when we're walking around a house with a prospective buyer and their agent,
mhm.
and they say, "Well, tell me a little bit more about this room," and Joanne or I can pull up our notes from our Dropbox file and say, "Hey, let me just pull it up for you. Oh, I have notes right here. This is what the seller said. This is something the seller loves about this room." And,
Yep.
and that's a process on the seller side that I just love. It
And
makes
I
my life
I
so
love that, we work with unique properties and
yes,
people will import things from like different areas of the world, like light fixtures or tile type or they will do very special things in their home that mean a lot to them and that were a lot of effort in the design process. And that shouldn't be lost
no,
during a showing. So having all of those things categorized, written down so that we can refer to them. Generally, the first couple of showings on a new listing, I'll probably look at the notes a couple of times. I always have them open on my phone. But, it's nice to have that backup because if you are carrying 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 listings, you're not going to forget which roof is 4 years old and which roof is 22 years old.
right,
And keeping those things straight, I mean, we're all human, right?
right,
Having that note intake form allows us because sometimes we will meet with a seller for an initial meeting and then both of us won't go back to the house again together.
you're right,
So it may be one of us has seen the house 2 or 3 times and the other one has only seen it once. So it's great to just have, hey, can you tell me somebody calls up and says, can you tell me what that flooring is in the master bath? I can say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you asked that. That is Italian porcelain such and such.
right.
So, what we try to do is be as thorough as possible so that when people are making these decisions about buying properties, we are cutting down the time from when they ask the question to when they're ready to make an offer.
Right.
It's an important piece to the sales process.
Yeah, and it's important for us to, and for agents out there, if you're thinking like, why would I want to have systems? Because it makes your life better. You get to work smarter, not harder. It's the overall experience is better for everybody. And something that I'm really proud that every year Joanne and I have spent time working on the business as
Mhm.
much as we work in the business. And too often people get caught up just transactions. And if
Right.
you really want to be excellent, you have to develop systems that work for your business. So,
Agreed.
well, listen, thank you everyone for coming for another edition of Coffee with Tom and Joanne. I'm Tom Matthews.
And I'm Joanne Taranto. Cheers.